So, I mean, the Dolphins are going to be the 6th seed either way, regardless of what happened on Sunday Night Football. But if the Dolphins beat the Chargers, then it changes everything, because I think the Chargers are basically done. And now with that huge win and an impressive performance by Justin Herbert and a very, very up and down performance by Tua Tagovailoa, the Chargers are now the 7th seed and the Dolphins are the 6th seed. And that pushes the Jets out of the playoffs. The Patriots can get to 7-6 if they win on Monday night. And then you got the Jaguars, and I don't think the Raiders are. Yes, technically the Raiders are lingering, but after Thursday night, it's hard to kind of take them seriously with that loss to the Rams. And Cleveland and Pittsburgh technically still alive on the fringes there. I don't even know if they would be in the hunt, Breech. But do you think this Chargers team profiles as a legitimate playoff contender?
The thing is that the Chargers had the talent last year. They have the talent this year. It's just a matter of, can they get all the chargering out of their system so that they can actually make the playoffs? I mean, we're all watching this game waiting for something to happen. Justin Herbert fumbles a freaking snap on the 5-yard line that almost cost this team the game. And that's the kind of crazy stuff that always happens to the Chargers somehow. But they recovered it. So they kind of got rid of that craziness. So, yeah.
They tried to give away the onside kick, too.
Yeah, yes, exactly. There's always some drama that doesn't need to be there with this team. And a lot of times it comes and bites them in the butt. So, yeah, I think the Chargers are one of the 7 most talented teams in the AFC. So I do feel like from a talent perspective, they absolutely are in the right spot. I think they have a great shot of getting in. But, you just can't lose dumb games, which they are known to do.
It's funny you mentioned the dumb game losses, because
I heard you on HQ talking about this, right?
Yeah, you're reading my mind after I said it out loud. But last week's Raiders loss, and you wonder if they're going to look back at that and go, GFC, why? Because as we sit here, they're 5-4 is their conference record. If they had won last week against the Raiders, they would be the 6th seed with a little cushion after should the Patriots win tomorrow night, because the Patriots are going to be the 7th seed if they win, and the Chargers will be on the outside looking in. And it's, as you mentioned, Breech, those stupid losses that come back to bite you. And not just the Chargers, although they seem to do it more than other teams, but any team that's hovering around 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, there's always something you can point to as to why you did or did not make it. And I'll just say this quickly about Miami, who's a 6th seed and is playing like a better version of the Vegas Raiders, and that's it. Like Tua was up and down, as you mentioned, Breech, no doubt about it. But Tyreek was banged up. Jalen Waddle didn't get his first catch until the 4th quarter. Mike McDaniel, who I believe, what was his title with San Francisco?
Well, he was run game coordinator. Then I guess you're getting to the run game point, but he was offensive coordinator. But before that, run game coordinator.
Yes, and for some reason, he doesn't want to run the ball. And last week against the 49ers, when they got stopped, the defense was on the field for 84 snaps. Not great. This tonight, 78 snaps. Also not great. So you got to figure this out if you're Mike McDaniel. And Tua does bear some of the responsibility, but I would put most of it on the coach. And if you're the Chargers, to Breech's point, you got to go to church. You got to say something and make sure you quit charging it up over the final month of the season.
Yeah, agree completely. Chargers give up 5.4 yards per carry. I mean, that's tied with the Giants for worst in the NFL. The only reason that they're not dead last in terms of yards given up, rushing yards given up, is that they hadn't played when these stats have been accrued. They still, you look at it. Raheem Mostert, 11 carries, 37 yards at 3.4, but Tua ran for 9.303 carries. And Jeff Wilson, before he got hurt, had 6.5 yards per carry on 4 carries. So, like, the way to attack the Chargers is running the football.
By the way, no Joey Bosa or Derwin James. What are you doing?
Yeah, tough.
And just to add some context to that real quick, Brinson, that it's 5.43 yards per carry. It's like a smidge above the Giants. That is on track to be the highest yards per carry that any team has given up in more than 60 years. Yeah. And so when you see that number as head coach, your automatic thought process should be, yeah, we should probably run the ball a bunch on this team. And the Dolphins just didn't do that. So that's one of those teams that, like, man, Wilson brought it up, or you brought it up a couple weeks ago, is how is this team going to look once December hits? And we were talking more outside, but maybe it's just December, January period, because they've just absolutely I don't want to say wet the bed, but that's kind of what it feels like the last 2 weeks.
They are at the Bills on Saturday, part of the triple header on Saturday, which always sneaks up on you. And you always get thrilled when you realize that you got to, I mean, not that, like, watching football is fun, don't get me wrong, but 3 games on Saturday, in week 15, could live without it. Packers at home on Christmas Day at the Patriots. So two huge division games against playoff caliber teams outdoors in the Northeast. We'll see. I mean, like, we'll see. I don't, you know, like, you don't want to make the presumption that Miami can't win in the cold weather, but I mean, that is when you play in Miami and you have to go north. It's just like when teams play in the Northeast and have to come to Miami in like September. You know, it is a completely different environment, and it's not something that you can like easily recreate. So short week against the Bills, massive game for the Dolphins. Do you think that, Wilson, do you think the Dolphins end up making the playoffs? I mean, they, you know, I mean, like, I don't want to beat on them too much for these two losses, but I mean, you really need to go 1-1 here, especially with the remaining schedule.
Well, as BMAC noted on HQ, the good news for the Chargers is that the AFC East is going to be kicking the crap out of each other for the final month of the season. So, you know, we'll see if the Chargers charger it up, but if they can just find a way to approach normalcy, they're actually in better shape in my eyes than Miami. And you wonder, you know, my sort of half-baked theory that Tyreek Hill is a rising tide that lifts all boats, and the boat being just a average quarterback, maybe slightly above average. Well, he's banged up, and that one play that he had was the craziest play that we've seen since whatever.
He also had the long touchdown catch where he sort of got a little bit of not busted coverage, but like he got wide open.
Yeah, Mike Davis fell down. It's just that happened. Fair enough, but my point is that he wasn't 100%. Jalen Waddle, as I mentioned, didn't get a catch until the fourth quarter. Only had 2 catches for the entire game, and then no running game, so no balance. So what we've seen, and even the Steelers sort of figured this out earlier in the season against Miami. Miami, I think, got up 2 scores early on by winging the ball over the yard, and then they just locked down and started double teaming everybody and forcing Tua to take things underneath and let them run the ball. Well, tonight Tua was inaccurate underneath, and they didn't run the ball. So you wonder if Mike McDaniel, who to this point has done a fantastic job, will sort of reassess, or if it's going to be one of these situations where he leans into it, sort of like Brandon Staley did last year as a first-year coach, who I loved, but a lot of people on the outside who didn't like him thought he was know-it-all. And I don't know if we'll get to the point with Mike McDaniel, but those are some questions that need to be answered.
I got a question that needs to be answered right now.
What is it?
For you guys, if you had to pick one of these two teams, the Dolphins and Chargers, to miss the playoffs, who is it?
538 has the Dolphins now. They are 8-5, right? Yes, that's correct. At 74% to make the playoffs, and the Chargers at 59% to make the playoffs. I look at the Chargers schedule, man, and I know that the Chargers, I can't believe I'm going to say this, because the Chargers do what the Chargers do. They charger, and they rip your heart out. They rip their own hearts out. It's like the scene from is it Temple of Doom, right? Where the heart ripping thing. But instead of like ripping someone else's heart out, it's like the Chargers reach in and like grab their own heart. Like, ha ha ha. Titans at home this coming week at the Colts, Rams at home, and the Rams are playing hard, but obviously not the same roster we thought they'd have. And then at the Broncos. There you go. That's high level graphics. Wilson holding up his phone.
That is the opposite of a murderer's row.
Right. Yeah, like I think I'd almost take the Chargers just because they're getting a little bit healthier in terms of the wide receiver core. You hope Bosa's coming back. Now, like Jalen Phillips played fantastic in this game, and but I think the Chargers defense as a whole is probably better if they get their stars back. And then, I mean, Herbert, we just don't need to compare Herbert and Tua moving forward. I think that's pretty fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we had flipped that conversation, but I'm taking the Chargers as well. I think to BMAC's point, AFC East will beat up on each other, and the Chargers just need to get out of their own way.
Now, also worth noting that the Chargers are 7-6, the Dolphins are 8-5, and that is a beneficial thing for Miami. All right, elsewhere in the AFC, the Titans lose. The Titans have a chance to basically put the division on ice, settle in, take care of the AFC South, beat the Jaguars, who hadn't won in Nashville since 2013, and Trevor Lawrence, my guy, and Evan Ingram. Lord, we saw that coming. Unexpected outcomes in week 14 of the NFL season in 2022. Evan Ingram goes nuts. Trevor Lawrence goes off. Derrick Henry had a huge rushing game, but only carried the ball twice in the second half because the Titans were playing catch up against the Jaguars. Titans now 7-6 and Jacksonville 5-8. Am I just being biased by suggesting, Wilson, that the Jaguars have some playoff life here at 5-8, or?
Yeah, why not? I mean, got a month to go. A lot can happen, and the Titans are an up and down football team. I don't know if this loss is on John Robinson or not, but he's no longer on the payroll, so he can sit home and laugh about it.
Mike Vrabel says it is.
Yeah. I mean, when you have 4 turnovers versus 0 turnovers, even if the team that you're playing hasn't beaten you 9 straight times in your home, that's doesn't portend good things. And you mentioned Derrick Henry going off in the first half, as he typically does. He's averaged over 100 yards rushing against the Jaguars in human history, I believe. But 2 turnovers by him, another fumble by Tannehill led to 17 points for the Jaguars. So, yay, Derrick. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't have those sorts of fumbles. One was incredibly unlucky that bounced right to Josh Allen. But, again, fumble in large part is about luck, fumble recovery. So, I don't know, man. Like the Titans, I'm up and down on them. I'm now – the arrow's pointing down in recent weeks given the way they played. Jaguars are a good football team, and they had underachieved early in the season when they were certainly ranked high according to Football Outsiders, but their record didn't indicate that, and now they're playing better. And credit to Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you can't take that away from him. He made some great throws. For me, though, Breech, the play of the game, it didn't necessarily it sort of affected the game, but in terms of this wasn't Trevor Lawrence, this is more Zay Jones. The Roger McCreary should have had the interception. It goes off his hands. Zay Jones makes a crazy catch in the back of the end zone. And I feel like receivers now in the last 4 or 5 years are infinitely better than they were 20 years ago, because the number of toe tap catches we see either in the end zone or along the sidelines and their ability to catch the football is mind-bogglingly insane. And that comes after Zay Jones dropped a pass early in the game and had some drops last week.
It's especially crazy when you consider, Breech, that like they just, for whatever reason, they just let college players go 1 foot. And so like you have to adjust. I think that's one of the things too. Like I feel like college players have gotten better at like trying to get 2 feet in, knowing that if they're going to be elite receivers, they need to work on that, getting towards the next level. But that's a different story for a different day. How's the palms and the butts and the seats in Nashville there, Breech?
Well, what's funny is that Mike Vrabel earlier this week said, hey, look, we're at a crossroads. We're going to see which fork we take at this point. And, well, they went the wrong way here. This is not what you want to come out, lose to a division rival. And like you were saying, Wilson, that touchdown pass to Zay Jones was right before halftime. I think there was like 10 seconds left. And it seemed like the Jags were almost playing for a field goal. And Trevor Lawrence like, let's just take a shot. And Zay Jones gets his toe in by about 3 centimeters. And it felt like that touchdown broke the Titans. They couldn't believe that Jacksonville scored on them. And, if I'm Mike Vrabel, I am saying after the game, look, guys, we have sucked the last 3 weeks. We deserve all the negative talk we are getting. But if we can just go 2-2 in these final 4 games, we win the division. Like, it's kind of that simple, because then you get to 9-8 and Jacksonville would have to go 4-0 to get to 9-8, and you look at their schedule, and they play the Cowboys this week. Jacksonville has to play the Cowboys in Week 15. Then they have to play the Jets 4 days later on Thursday night. So their next 2 games, and if they lose,
NFL for that one, actually,
right, and if they lose either one of those games, then the Titans only need to win 1 game of their final 4. So just the way they built such a big lead by going 7-3 in their first 10 games, that I feel like they've got a big margin for error, although they are very much testing that right now. These 3
they've got so on Christmas Eve at 1:00 they play the Texans at home. I mean, it's just like we've seen this movie before, right? Late season, bad Houston team, Derrick Henry, 275 rushing yards, right? That's like put Henry out. They get the Chargers this week, and then the Texans. So like this is a really like where if you're Mike Vrabel, you say, okay, this is a bad loss, but we are still very much in control of our destiny. 85%, 86% to make the playoffs right now. You have 2 teams that are terrible against the run, and then you close with the Cowboys and at the Jaguars. And what you want to do, I think, Breech, to your point, is make it where that Week 18 game in Jacksonville, it is not relevant to the discussion of the division, and it only matters for Jacksonville trying to get in as a wild card, which they could still do. It's they're actually 14% to, I mean, they basically need to get through the division, I think, with all the 5-8 teams there in the AFC. All right, anything for you, Wilson, left on that? Or
no? I just think it's funny that Breech is basically, in his role as Mike Vrabel, is giving them like, okay, I'm not asking for much. Just please win 1 game, and maybe we'll
just go. Derek, look, listen, we're not going to play Derrick Henry against the Chargers. We're just going to save him for the Texans game and let him, uncork.
And it's such a flip from last year where the Titans were the number 1 seed. Now I think they're the team that the Bengals probably would love to play them. If the Titans are the 4 seed, the Dolphins are probably. Everybody wants to play the Titans in the playoffs now.
Yeah, for sure. The Bills really took care of. They had the Jets like completely dominated for that entire game, and somehow the Jets creeped back in it, made it very much a sort of a close contest at the end. Maybe more important to the discussion of Buffalo is that with the win and with Kansas City, blasting Russell Wilson and company, although Russ at least I guess made it a little interesting by halftime. We have two 10-3 teams at the top of the AFC. Wilson, which 10-3 team for you is most likely to take the number 1 seed? I believe it's essentially a coin flip at 538. I think the Bills are 47%. No, not quite coin flip. Chiefs 41. That's the tiebreaker there. And then any guesses as to who the third team would be?
My third team is the Cincinnati Bengals.
That is correct. 9%, 2% for the Ravens.
In fact, they're not my. I think it's like 1A, 1B, and 1C.
Wow.
I think like the Bengals are not messing around, and I don't say that lightly, Breech, and that's not the Snoopy blood seeping into my brain.
And I didn't brainwash you.
Hey, I told everybody I did a short 3 weeks ago and said everybody needs to bet the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. Like, what?
Because here's the thing, like you mentioned that Buffalo had that game in hand. I watched every play. They did not have that game in hand. Mike White might be the toughest human on planet Earth. That mug took an ass whooping, and he just kept coming back out there. But that's a story for another time. But I think.
Sorry, just to clarify, I'm not saying that like.
No, I know.
If it like because I wouldn't watch every play of that game because it's New York, but it's like it's 17-7 Buffalo in the going into the fourth quarter in the 27. It felt like it was.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of points scored. The weather was terrible, and it was a slog. But I give Saleh and that crew credit for battling, and Mike White especially. But the larger point for me is in watching Buffalo and Kansas City. Who? Oh yeah, and Bam played well too. In terms of Buffalo and Kansas City, is that their quarterbacks, while two of the best players in the NFL, aren't firing on all cylinders. And Josh Allen, I think he's probably still injured. Anytime you have a question about a player who's not playing like they used to play 2 weeks ago, typically it's an injury that's lingering. And I think that's probably the case with Josh Allen, who made some good throws and missed some throws. I don't know what was going on with Patrick Mahomes. I think he thought they were, after he threw that no-look Harlem Globetrotters touchdown, he's like, well, I can do anything on these chumps. And then like, wait a second. Josie Jewell's like, wait 1 second, and had those 2 interceptions, Patrick Surtain another. So if there's still some lack of focus and lack of crispness with the quarterback situation in these two teams, and Joe Burrow continues to Joe Burrow it up, I ain't sleeping on your Bengals Breech as the number 1 team.
Yeah, and the Bills, the Bengals will have a say in the number 1 seed, whether they get it or not, because they play the Bills in week 17. And the thing about Buffalo is you feel good about yourself because you have the head-to-head over Kansas City. So the Chiefs have to finish a full game ahead of you. But then the flip side of that is that the Chiefs have the easiest remaining strength of schedule by far, with games against the Texans, the Broncos, the Seahawks, who are floundering right now, and then the Raiders. So it's one of those situations where I feel like it's probably going to be Kansas City. If I had to bet on it right now, I would probably put the number 1 seed on Kansas City.
I don't think that's. I tend to agree. And by the way, I should point out that the Chiefs did not blast the Broncos. Obviously, it was a 1-score game, much closer. I think what happened was I saw Marlon Mack house a 66-yard screen pass from Russell Wilson in week 14 of 2022, and in my brain, I think my synapses just cracked in half, and I couldn't even fathom the score after that because it was 27-0. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah, the game was over.
Like,
and then
27-0 with 432 when Willie Gay intercepted Russ on
Mahomes started throwing picks.
Yeah, and it's like, man, that's a little. I mean, maybe to your point, Wilson, maybe it was sort of all right, like we're playing with our food type of situation. You allow him to crawl back in, but if I'm Andy Reid, I don't love seeing that against a division opponent in week 14 as you're trying to really ramp up and chase that 1 seed. Great performances though. Like you look at the Chiefs and they do have just not like the most amazing weapons, but I think that collection of guys that they brought in have really become like very complementary to each other. And
they're still waiting for Kadarius Toney.
Yep. Kadarius Toney, who they traded for. Sky Moore didn't have a very big game at all. Marcus Valdez-Scantling didn't do much. We've seen different guys step up at different times. And, with Buffalo, and again, different weather conditions, playing a much, both playing good defenses, but with Buffalo, Dawson Knox had that great touchdown. It does feel like, while they have a lot of weapons, their weapons are better. They just don't have as many as Kansas City. And everybody's still waiting on this like Gabe Davis nuclear game. The Bills have the Dolphins at home on Saturday, at the Bears. So you'd think you go 2-0 there if you're taking care of business. A January 2nd game. Hi, Billy. Against the Bengals, which is enormous for seeding potential. That is that
the final Monday night game of the year?
It was listed at 8:30. Threw me off. And then a TBD game, of course, against the Patriots in Week 18. So, Buffalo could go. I mean, I think Buffalo probably goes 3-1, but could go 2-2. The Chiefs, meanwhile, have at the Texans. I mean, come on, you better take care of business. Seahawks at home, Broncos at home. They get the Broncos twice in the last 5 weeks, and at the Raiders. Like, I think if the Chiefs go 4-0, they probably get the 1 seed. Seems fair.
Yeah, I won't push back on that.
I mean, if they go 4-0, they get it. Or you think the Bills, because they'll lose at least one?
I'm saying I think the Bills will. I think the Bills probably drop one down the stretch.
A lot of sass in Breech's voice there.
I know. He's like, "What do you?" I think he was about to be like,
I mean, like, yeah, I mean, 4-0. It's 4-0.
It did sound kind of stupid when it came out of my mouth. I'll be honest.
But if the Bills go 4-0, it doesn't matter.
The Bills go 4-0, they get it. The Bills control.
I think the Chiefs are much more likely to go 4-0 than the Bills. Is what I'm saying.
The Bills have to face the old Bengals.
All right, couple more notes on the AFC playoff race. So New England plays on Monday. It's like what do we do with Baltimore? Ravens snuck one out against Mitchell Trubisky and the Steelers, but I mean, my God,
they should have won that game by 50 points. I don't know, man. That's why I said the Bengals. I like them much better as a chance to be a number 1 seed, and by that, of course, that means they're winning the division. I like the Ravens better than Tennessee. Not a lot more. Like if they were playing in a neutral field right now, and assuming Lamar was healthy, it might be a pick 'em. Like I don't know. Like those teams are so scattershot. Like you don't know what you're going to get. This team is not. They're good. They're just not consistent, and I think they're actually less consistent than the Titans, who what they do well, and when they don't do that well, they lose. So I have no real faith in this team beyond making the playoffs.
The one thing about the Ravens, and by the way, shout out to Caesars for getting these division odds up so quick. Ravens minus 130 now, Bengals plus 110 to win the AFC North. With the Ravens, their offense was so explosive for the first month-ish of the season, maybe 6 weeks, kind of cooled down. Lamar started playing bad for a while, but and the defense couldn't stop anybody, particularly in the pass and every pass rush. And now the defense is like actually pretty good, but the offense can't really do anything. So I just sort of wonder. And again, it all comes back to Lamar here. If Lamar can come back and be healthy, like J.K. Dobbins didn't look fantastic, but he came back and he had a really nice game stat wise. He got walked down on a he just didn't look explosive. He just sort of, what I'm saying? Like if the Ravens can just sort of hold on for dear life, and it
sounds like the Titans philosophy.
Yeah, but it's like hold on for dear life, steal the division, and then get Lamar back in time and make a playoff run. I think they're a little sneaky, but yeah, they're hard to figure out.
Do you like them better than the Titans?
About 6.5 I guess. It all depends on Lamar.
I just don't trust this team.
Yeah, I don't trust him either. The thing about
the funny thing is they could very well end up playing the Titans in the wild card round if the Bengals win the division. The Ravens end up with the 5 seed and Tennessee as the 4 seed.
How long will they? What do the NFL rules say, Breech, if a game is tied 0-0 after 27 overtimes? Like, how long are you willing to let it go?
In the playoffs, the limit is 4 years, is my understanding.
I thought you were going to say 4 overtimes. I was like, what?
Buckle up. Yeah, I would have believed it.
Okay, last thing on the AFC, and then we'll move on. You get one 5-8 team to get crazy.
Ugh.
I'll take the Jaguars.
That's the easy one.
That's probably the only answer. The Raiders should just be 6-7. That's so bad. Cleveland ain't got it, and you're not trusting Pittsburgh, right?
Get out of here.
Well, it's a bunch of these 5-8 teams play each other. The Steelers still have to play the Browns. They still have to play the Raiders. So that's boom. That's going to eliminate a couple of those 5-8 teams.
Yep. And
then your boys in Jacksonville probably have the most difficult path with the Cowboys and Jets.
Yeah,
there's a path.
And if the Titans can just beat the Texans, they basically need like some help from the Dolphins and the Chargers. All right.
I love that Breech thinks that the Steelers, Browns, and Raiders are going to disqualify themselves by playing each other. They've been disqualified for weeks now.
Well, I was trying to answer Brinson's question. Sorry, Wilson. My goodness.
You gave me false hope and then you dashed it.
Dunking on Brinson's question.
All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back, Ryan Wilson is going to pound the drum, stand at the table, whatever the hell you want to say, for a team that's under 500 to make the
You
playoffs.
know it. I'm going to do the Drew Lock on the sideline stance.